Welcome to the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. I'm Kevin C. Neese.
And I'm Mike Poteet.
And I'm David Atwell, and you're listening to episode 78, reviewing Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 1, Red Directive, and Episode 2, Under the Twin Moons.
We'll start off with some Star Trek trivia questions.
And then we'll get into our main topic, talking about the return of Star Trek Discovery for, unfortunately, its final season, with the first two episodes, Red Directive and Under the Twin Moons. It is so good to be back here with you, and we're excited for you to join us. Come on along. Well, hi, guys.
Hi.
Howdy.
Welcome back.
I feel like
you.
I just stepped out for a minute, and all of a sudden 2 years have passed. I don't know what's going on here, but it feels like a little bit of weird, like, temporal bends.
Temporal bends. Are you experiencing temporal bends as well, Mike?
Oh, yeah, the pandemic messes with everybody's sense of time, so it's hard to know. 2 days, 2 years.
Right. That's good. Well, we are back, and we are so glad to be here. This was a day we were not sure was going to come for a while, it's been a couple of years, and we've missed all of you very much. We've missed being here, doing the thing. So we've covered Discovery. We definitely have covered Discovery more than any other series on this show. So it just didn't feel right for Discovery to end without us riding along for the for the final journey. So here we are. We had to pause for various reasons. Too many reasons to talk about. Also, too many boring, stupid reasons to talk about. But David has the best reason of all of us. So. David, would you like to share?
Yeah, listeners might recall that right before the unexpected hiatus of Gospel According to Star Trek podcast, I did start my own hiatus because our family was expecting our fourth child, and he was born, and he's healthy, and he's now coming up on 2 years old. So it's been very exciting to get to know Simon and to sort of integrate him into a part of our family, and I'm looking forward to introducing him to Star Trek when he's old enough, and this is going to be a great way to sort of get back into the swing of talking about the things that matter and talking about stories and about the gospel in a way that is really helpful and winsome. And so I'm excited to get back into this just for the opportunity to exercise my gospel and theology and media criticism brain again. It's really exciting to be back.
It is
Congratulations to you and your family.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Many congratulations. And I'm so glad that he is doing well and flourishing and thriving and all of that.
Yeah.
And I do believe they published some Star Trek board books now, like colors and numbers, like using illustrations from the various series. So, go for it. Introduce him to Star Trek right now. Tonight.
Well, I hope he is asleep by this point.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Next time
and
he's awake.
I do need to thank you in particular, Mike. You got him his first Starfleet uniform, and he wore that with pride.
Oh, I did?
Yeah. He wore that with pride for the first several months of his life. So, that was pretty great.
Well, excellent.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so sweet.
I didn't know it was going to go for a Starfleet uniform, but I do approve. My brother-in-law gave us a Star Trek uniform for our son when he was born, and I have to say it was a TNG Red Command uniform, and it looked darn good on the kid.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Now I'm realizing I've missed out on something as a parent. Oh, man.
You took plenty of pictures of Simon in that uniform, I hope, so that you can show him someday and he can say, "Oh, Dad."
Yes, exactly. That's right.
Exactly. Well, it is so good to be back. I am, it's a bittersweet moment because, we're happy to have Discovery back, but it's a sad thing that it's the final season. So just so our listeners are aware, Our plan so far does not extend beyond the final season of Discovery. We don't know what we're doing after that. We're going to have to see how this goes, how our lives are unfolding, and what we're able to pull off. But of course, we would love to just kind of keep this ship flying. So, I don't know. We've been away so long. Our podcasting mechanism has even changed hands now, and I don't even know what support features Spotify for podcasters has, if any. But if you feel like supporting us on that, that would help us stick around, and we'll try to sort that out and find out how that's going to go in future episodes. So, Mike, I have this this burning urge in the back of my mind, this thing that says it's time for Star Trek trivia. And I have this deep innate sense that you can help us with that.
You are deep in the trivia fever, are you? All right. Well, now remember the Star Trek trivia cards, much like our podcast, are a little out of date. So nothing past Star Trek Enterprise is on the radar for this trivia game. But I do have some trivia questions, and we'll do as we've always done. I'll read the questions, and I've not seen the answers myself. We'll put our answers into the chat to reveal them later in the show. But you guys ready?
Ready.
Yep.
All right. The first question. With which alien race did the Vulcans have a 100-year war? We should have the Jeopardy think music going.
I was just about to do that. My family and I were watching Jeopardy like an hour ago, actually.
All right.
Okay.
That's
all right.
number one.
I'm gonna put something down. Okay.
Can't win if you don't play. So yes, by all means, put something down.
Right.
We've got those golden self-sealing Stembolts at stake.
Oh yes, that's right.
All right, everybody ready for number two?
Let's do it.
Ready.
Why do Captain Kirk and Lieutenant Uhura kiss in the original series episode Plato's Stepchildren?
Oh yeah. Do. We do need some
listeners at
some
home,
music.
You'd be making a note of your answers as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right, ready for the third and final question?
Yep.
All right. Majel Barrett plays Counselor Troy's mother, Luoxana.
Mm-hmm.
What was her relationship to the creator of Star Trek?
Oh, gee whiz. That's a hard one.
They're tough tonight, I tell you. We ease ourselves back in.
Don't speak too forcefully about how easy these questions are, because I think
all right.
I think I might have missed at least one of them. All right, cool, good. So we will learn those answers at the end of the show. Okay, so it is time. It is time to talk about these new episodes of Star Trek Discovery, Season 5, Episode 1, Red Directive, and Episode 2, Under the Twin Moons. And I think we're going to kind of just sort of mush these things together. We're just going to kind of skate through them.
Just like Paramount Plus did, we're dropping them both at once.
Which, okay, let's start with that, because I was annoyed by that.
Oh, really?
I mean, as a fan, to like to sit down and watch Discovery, I loved getting to watch 2 episodes back to back. That was great, and they worked well together, right? As
really
almost like
well
a two-parter. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
But that just means this final season that is already coming too soon is 1 week shorter than it would otherwise be.
That's
and
true.
that annoys me.
Yeah.
But
we are sort of in that bingeable world now, right? Like everything is going to be dropped all at once. We're probably going to get Prodigy season 2 the same way, where it's just like everything comes all at the same time, and you just have to sort of deal with it. I don't know. I feel like I had heard rumblings that model of consuming media was kind of falling out of favor among the streaming companies for a while.
Yeah.
But yet they still seem to keep doing it. So I don't know.
Well, they've chosen their policies. I mean, certain ones do and certain ones don't. So like Netflix is still drop all at once because they pioneered that. Right. But a lot of the other services, Disney Plus and Hulu and Paramount, I know for sure those are all week at a time. And I think there's a lot of advantage to that.
Yeah.
I think it retains viewers, retains subscribers, and honestly, I think we gain something from not binging.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, that was one of the things that this is now I'm talking about Strange New Worlds in the middle of our Discovery podcast, but
Strange New Worlds, what's that? I've never heard of that series before.
One of the things that I kind of wish that we had a chance to talk about, and we will, really. We will. But in the moment, just feeling that sense of comfort and like being wrapped up in a warm blanket almost of just this episodic once per week story that didn't sort of rest on any other pieces. It didn't have, it had this sort of episodic contained thing. It felt so familiar and so lovely. And as much as I love the fact that they're allowing these storylines to play out over the long time scale with Discovery, I really just felt this sort of deep kinship, or not kinship, but this deep comfort about having it one episode per week. That just felt right to me. So I don't know, that might be a topic for another podcast, but I really missed that. And I agree. I think it is sad that, we're already getting so much less Discovery by, pure minutes of watch time, but also we're getting less Discovery by number of weeks we can watch it.
Mm-hmm. Something else that's lost when all episodes are dumped at once, or maybe something that shifts rather, is the nature of water cooler conversations.
Right.
Yeah. Because, I remember with some Netflix shows that my coworkers at the office, when I still worked in the office, were introducing me to was, how much have you seen? Because you don't want to accidentally spoil somebody with a bit from episode 8 when they're only at episode 4.
Yeah.
And so it does change those. But by the same token, we were also watching an HBO series at the time, which was still dropping weekly, or broadcasting weekly over HBO. Max wasn't even a thing yet. And we had that enjoyment of coming in Monday morning and talking about the previous night's episode. So, and our family, even with shows that are dropped all at once, we will pace them out for ourselves. So we don't have so many show holes,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good plan. I like that. And yeah, I agree. And particularly for the work we do, I appreciate the week by week format.
Right.
So it's
gives
good.
a better chance to process.
Yeah, it does. So what did we think? What were your thoughts on, at least Red Directive?
My initial reaction, as always with Discovery, is, gosh, this is a gorgeous show.
It is.
So, even in Strange New Worlds is too, but Discovery just has a movie quality look to it all the time. And so I was favorably impressed by that. I'm always also with Discovery a little frustrated by, at least the last few seasons, it seems, the puzzle piece nature of the season long story. Like it's there's even a literal puzzle box in this year's story. Right. but where it's we're going to go on a quest to find the next piece of the puzzle each week. And I know it's not going to be just that, so I'm not trying to be too hard on it, but I did feel a little familiarity to the structure of, here's the thing, and there's 6 or 7 different pieces we have to go around the galaxy and collect. And so, but
So I also recognize that as they're going back to that well again, right? But I actually thought it was interesting that that structure, they're kind of presenting it to us in a little bit of a different way this year. So like you mentioned, in season 3, they doled out the burn over all 10 episodes. You didn't find out until it was 9 or 10. I don't remember what the burn was. I think it was 10. And then same thing, season 4, 10C, over the whole 10 episodes. It wasn't until 9 or 10 that we finally got. And so at the very end, once they finally reveal the mystery, you have to, reveal the mystery, solve the mystery, and wrap it all up in 1 or 2 episodes. And this time around, at least for now, there aren't any burning questions about like the nature of the story. Like we've already got all of those pieces out. So by the end of the episode, if you haven't watched it yet, you're watching along with us. We're I'm going to go ahead and spoil it. We find out what the big mystery of the season is. Like they just go ahead and reveal what's in the puzzle box, what the puzzle box is pointing to. At the end of this episode, we know that it's a sort of take on, it's the chase part 2, basically. And we get to sort of see where the end goal is going to be. We also get a little bit of like heavy place setting for what the emotional arc and the character arcs are going to be. Stamets talking about his legacy and what does it mean for his life when his life's work is no longer relevant, and a similar sort of thing with Saru, of him trying to figure out what is his legacy, what is his purpose, all of that sort of thing. And I think in episode 2 we get even more of that as well. And so I felt like rather than us waiting for the entire season to go by to figure out what it's all going to be about, I was really gratified to see that they decided to go ahead and not give up the game right up front, but at least to set the table for us in a way that they haven't for the last couple of seasons. And I thought that was really, really helpful. And it really improved my appreciation for both of these episodes a lot.
Yeah, the shift is that it's not the thing itself that's the mystery.
Right.
The mystery is how we get to it. So it's a real treasure hunt, as it is even called in episode 2. I think it might be Saru who calls it like the greatest treasure hunt in the galaxy or something like that. And that's really
Saru or Admiral Vance.
I was torn between Saru and Vance, and and that's really what it is. And that's kind of I found that kind of exciting and interesting, especially because we have our little key with our puzzle pieces that fit into it. So now there's this codex. Now there's this pattern, and we know that there are 4 more things we need to get to fill this up. And so there's this very established structure to what it is we're going to need to find and in what order, instead of just, well, let's just keep chasing this mystery until we run out of episodes. It's very interesting. And I think that also kind of means there are little mysteries along the way, because you solve each step and you solve each step. Each step. And I just found that intriguing when they were putting the little puzzle pieces together. I was just like, oh, this is interesting. This is kind of exciting. I'm here for this.
Yeah, I agree, and I thought just you mentioning the puzzle pieces, like I thought that was a really clever visual flourish that they added to where now every time we see that little piece, we're gonna know how far along in the story they are.
That's right.
So very clever, very very good craft that they're sort of implementing there. I like that a lot.
Yep.
So did anybody ever expect that Star Trek would return to the chase?
I've long wondered about that, and I think I have, because it's like
an honest question. I mean, I hadn't, but
I didn't think
say more.
I didn't think they would necessarily, but it's always one of those things that's been dangling out there. It's kind of like in Next Generation, where we found out that warp drive is messing with the fabric of space time, and we have to have a warp speed limit, but then that never goes anywhere.
Yeah, well, they ditched that pretty quick.
Right. That's what always happens. Like, we drop these big things, and then we never go anywhere with them. And so there are lots of those kind of hanging out there. And and one of the few that wasn't just nixed, was this one. And it's always been kind of like, man, do we write this off as this one episode doing this thing, and we can kind of say, well, that worked for that episode, but we don't have to take it that seriously? Or are we going to say, this is sort of a core part of the structure of the Star Trek universe? And now that Discovery has picked this thread back up again, it absolutely is. Mm-hmm. And that's fascinating for our purposes, because here we are in Discovery now, picking up this thing from Next Generation and talking about origins. We're talking about where we come from. I think Paul even says at one point, 1,000. Is it Paul or is it? I can't remember who says things. Paul or Vance. It's always either Vance or somebody. Says 1,000 years ago we might have called them gods.
Right.
And
Kovich. I think it was Kovich.
Kovich. Yes, you're right. Yes, because he's explaining the whole thing. He's unpacking the whole story. And so I find that interesting, because for me, that has always been, when we talk about the question of origins, when we talk about the question of like where intelligent life in the universe comes from, where the universe comes from, where especially, I mean, now that we have all these humanoid species in Star Trek, it's an interesting way to retcon it, to say, well, they look similar because they all came from the same DNA, which is kind of a cool way to talk about why, well, these people are aliens, but they just look like us with bumps on their heads. It's kind of a way to massage that a little bit, make it a little more believable.
And so, and it also, I think, it does a lot to sort of affirm the Federation and the existence of the Federation, because the Federation, the whole point of it is that we are better together, right? That we have more in common than we have separate. I think that's a beautiful message for a divided world that we live in now. And I think that the idea of the chase and the progenitors and all of this stuff goes a long way toward sort of solidifying it and codifying it and affirming the Federation's mission, and saying that all of these species are more alike than they are different. We all have this sort of same baseline existence and origin, and as a result, we can all work together. We have that capability, even if we don't necessarily always reach out for it. We all have that capability. We can do it, and I think that's pretty cool. That's a really clever way, like you said, a really clever way to sort of paper over the fact that like we could only actually cast humans in these roles, right? But it also is a really neat way to sort of tie that in with the existence and the purpose of the Federation as a whole, to say, no, not only is this a noble thing, but it's kind of like what we're all made for anyway.
It becomes like a kind of big family reunion. Right? And it's interesting because you hear you say this is being codified, because I kind of felt like that's what the chase did 30 years ago, or whenever it first aired. I wanted to go back and rewatch it before tonight, but I haven't had the chance. But I remember thinking at the time, okay, well, this episode exists to address the issue of why do they all look like humans with bumps on their foreheads. So I kind of viewed it at the time as putting a button on that, and we wouldn't revisit it. So it really surprised me that they'd go back to it, and not in a bad way necessarily, for all the reasons you've laid out. But I'm guessing Discovery has something deeper to bring out that wasn't stated, or at least wasn't stated explicitly in the chase. And I think it's, as one of you just mentioned, this idea that 1,000 years ago we would have called the progenitors gods.
Right.
I mean, they use some of the phrases that people in the Star Trek original series movies used to describe the Genesis Project, the power of creation, and if this falls into the wrong hands. I mean, I think those are clearly evoking memories of Genesis and how that power could be used and abused. And also, I think it was Burnham's reflections at the beginning of the second episode very much cast this thing in a, if not outright theological light, very close to it. That we are going to be dealing with. It's going to be much deeper than here's why all the aliens in Star Trek look, mostly all look humanoid. So.
And that's really that's really interesting. That comes from Burnham, because we've talked about this before, but her progress as a character from being such a strict rationalist in the first season, almost to a fault, and how she's opened up to sort of the soulishness of existence through her experiences. I find that fascinating.
She's getting in touch with like her her human side, having been raised on Vulcan,
right.
Or Navarre now, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think, by the way, just in case anybody listening hasn't seen Next Generation or hasn't seen it in a while, we're talking about Season 6, Episode 20 of Next Generation, The Chase, when we're talking about the progenitors and sort of this being The Chase Part 2. And that was indeed aired in April of 1993. So
wow.
It is 31 years old.
Wow.
Or will be 31 years old in a couple of weeks. So yeah, that's you're right. I mean, this is
I feel old.
I won't tell you that I was 8 years old when that came out.
Oh, thank you for not telling me that. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think that's all. You make excellent points in all senses there. I think that there's a lot of. Mike, you were talking about how this shares a lot of DNA with the Wrath of Khan, and I think between season 5 of Discovery and season 3 of Picard, which obviously we're not going to go into detail here about that, but there is a lot of, I think, the Star Trek industrial complex, I don't know, going back to that well as like this thing worked and it worked really well, and what can we pull out of it? And I feel like there's a cynical way to look at that as like, oh, they're just trying to like play all the hits and get nostalgia bonus points and stuff. But I also think that there's maybe a more hopeful way to look at that, which is that like in this, in that original in the original Nick Meyer story of Wrath of Khan, there was a lot of real human emotion that was sort of distilled down into these perfect points. And so if you're going to do anything that's that successful again and do it in the Star Trek universe, it's going to have similar touch points to it, and it's going to feel very similar to that. When you're writing a story and you do end up doing that, there's almost no way to like do that and not reference it or not like pull on those threads a little bit. So so I think probably the truth is somewhere in between those two. But yeah, I also noticed its similarities to the Wrath of Khan.
Well, and I think
one thing. Go ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, I think we talk about calling back to Wrath of Khan because it's the most popular, thing in Star Trek. It's what everybody loves. But one of the reasons that film works so well is that it brings in these ideas that were part of Star Trek from the beginning and that have been recapitulated over and over and over throughout the original series and into the motion picture and through the animated series and all of that. These ideas of what we do with power, right? What is the greatest power?
Right.
What we do, the concept of a God. What is a God? Who deserves to be called God? Is there anyone who does? And what happens if we get the power of God? That's, to me, one of the most fundamental narratives in all of Star Trek. And it goes all the way back to where no man has gone before.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole, or Charlie X. I mean, there's so many things just from the original series that talk about power and how we get it and what we do with it and how those things affect how the power affects us and how it affects others. So a power that might seem benevolent or good, like the power to give life, is also very clearly, possibly, the power to destroy.
Yeah.
And so when we and I kept hearing a couple of times in Under the Twin Moons talking about the wrong hands, and I just heard Bones McCoy in my head.
Yeah.
Would you mind telling me whose are the right hands, my logical friend?
Yeah.
And that's still a relevant question.
Absolutely, and it's clearly these two villains we're going to be running after and running into throughout the season, Maul and Locke, are the wrong hands. But interestingly, one difference from Wrath of Khan, although you can view Khan with some measure of sympathy, I don't think ultimately you're meant to view him with all that much sympathy. But Maul and Locke are interesting so far, at least, because they're the bad guys, and we're told they're the bad guys. Captain Rennick says they're the bad guys, but they have a different. It appears. I mean, it's still early in the season, so maybe this will change. But it seems like they have a genuinely caring relationship for each other. And when Maul says to Book in the second episode, all we have is each other, and that's more than enough.
Yeah,
I think that really resonates with Book on a deep level, because his relationship with Burnham isn't what it was, and he would like it to be. I think he would like to go back to. He would like to be just the two of them gallivanting across the universe, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I guess my point is they're setting up these antagonists. Perhaps to be more fully developed as the season goes on, and already hints of, something that maybe we, through Michael and through Book and through some others, need to learn from them. I mean, I have no illusions that in the end it's going to turn out okay for Starfleet and the Federation. I don't know exactly how, and crisis will be averted. But I'll be curious to see what happens to these two characters, because the fact that they go to the trouble in the first episode of introducing us to them before our heroes meet them, shows that I think it shows they're going to spend some time developing them as real characters, and I'm excited about that.
Well, I think that's a good point too, Mike. That they're sort of being. I hadn't thought about that. They're being set up as like a foil to Burnham and Book, and I thought. I thought they were compelling characters on their own, and they didn't necessarily need to be like related to another Cleveland Booker or anything like that. But I thought that was an interesting thread to pull on as well. But no, that you mentioning that they're sort of the evil foil to what Burnham and Book used to be. That's a really interesting read on it. I really like that.
And especially Book, because they mentioned several times in these episodes, oh, well, as a former courier, blah, blah, blah. And because he was a courier, blah, blah, blah. I mean, this is like the road not taken for Book is a life lived like Maul and Locke are living. For bad, or maybe for some good in some ways. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I was noting how quickly you said that it's clear that Maul and Locke are the wrong hands, and I'm like, is it though?
Maybe,
is it
though?
We don't know yet.
We don't know what their motives are.
We don't know their motives. We don't know their goals. We have no idea.
I mean,
we have a pretty good indication that it's money, right?
Right.
Yeah, they seem to be just in it for the money. I don't think Locke wants to go off and start, a new universe or something.
Right.
True. He wants to hang out with his girlfriend somewhere and sip cocktails. That's not the line he says. Something along those lines,
right?
Yeah.
Hang out in a holosuite, I think, was what his way.
Yeah. He wants to live a life with her, and this money from this job is going to be what sets them up to do it. He hopes. Now, maybe Maul doesn't want that. She didn't, as I recall, immediately respond with 100%. Oh yeah, that sounds great. Or oh no, let's not do that. Just as I recall, her response was kind of either ambiguous or maybe not even a direct response at all. But so I don't know. But what she said to Book about what we have as each other, and that's more than enough. Yeah, shows me that she does value their relationship, and so as I just say, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
It really will be.
I agree, and I love that we've got all these new pieces, but I also am really intrigued. We talked a little bit about it. I'm also really intrigued that they are using all of these old pieces as well. They're sort of using the existing world of Star Trek as like a basis for the storyline, right? Like they've got, obviously the chase, right? That's the big obvious thing there. But they're pulling in a lot of other things as well. And one of the things that I noticed that was maybe the most surprising was Captain Raymer, the captain of the Antares.
That's his name.
Yeah. He okay. I don't know where they got this data, but on Memory Alpha, they have him listed as a Kelleran. And that is interesting because that is the alien race from Deep Space Nine, Season 2, Episode 13, Armageddon Game. They only appeared in that one episode. But this is the one...
Cut.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. That's the episode where O'Brien and Bashir are sort of... they're sort of... they're reported dead in the course of like disarming this alien race. And after their like ceasefire, right? And then it turns out they aren't dead, and then the Kellerans are trying to chase them down and kill them. It's an awesome deep cut.
Mm-hmm.
But like this
season 2. Wow, that's that's
I know.
early. That's wow.
That's early 90s, right? Yeah. So but they it also the main sort of Kelleran character on that is a very binary thinker. Like he's inflexible, he's driven, he's got almost this like almost this vendetta against Bashir and O'Brien, and eventually even Cisco. And so I thought that was a great way that they used some great characterization to sort of start present this character from this one single episode, that apparently this is the way that this species does things. But then the fact that he was able to like make change his mind when he's been sort of shown that he's wrong or shown that he's off base in some way. And it remains to see if that remains to be seen if that's going to be the way that he acts throughout the season. But I thought it was really impressive, like to take this character who has a almost 30-year history of this race that has an almost 30-year history of this inflexibility and drivenness, and to use him to say that changing your mind is a virtue when you're proven wrong, especially when it's painful. Like, that was really cool and really clever. And I love that Starfleet. I keep saying Starfleet. I love that Star Trek as a franchise is big enough that it can be a world where that sort of thing can happen. Where that sort of deep cut can be used to such great effect if you know what's going on, and still be understandable to people who don't know what's going on.
I was going to say, even if you don't, because I noticed his ears, but I figured, okay, it's an alien, it's Star Trek, they show up. So
right,
yep. I really liked his character. He reminded me some of Jellicoe, actually. He reminded me a lot of Captain Shaw from season 3 of Picard. But I really liked him, and I love the fact that he's going to be Michael's executive officer this season. I think that's going to be
marvelous.
It's fascinating to see how that plays out.
And Mike, you were mentioning that like Michael Burnham brings Raymer on as her first officer, and Kevin, you were talking earlier about Michael's sort of full circle. Sort of from this very logical to this much more emotional and much more open to the mysteries of the universe. I thought that the fact that she chose Raymer as her first officer was really another really cool full circle moment for her, because she was that untrustworthy mutineer first officer at the very beginning of the series. And now she's sort of been able to pull herself together and become a person who can give somebody else that same second chance that she was given. That was really cool.
There were multiple moments in Under the Twin Moons that caused me to tear up, because good Star Trek always does, and particularly Discovery is really good at that. But when Michael said to Raymer, I was given a second chance once. This is yours. I was just like, because I think, especially we're coming off of the Easter season. Many of us have been thinking about resurrection. We've been thinking about restoration. We've been thinking about renewal. I think one of the things that keeps the concept of Easter grounded for me as my life progresses, and as I continue to be as much of a skeptic as I am a mystic, is that the idea of where that finality can be overcome in our lives, where those little deaths that we die can lead to little resurrections, is one of those ways in which I feel like we can sort of cultivate a small flame of faith when our wood feels wet. You know what I'm saying? I love that. And that is something that just really is something I hang on to every year at Easter, because my Easter engagement isn't always what I want it to be because of practical reasons or whatever, and so I know for a lot of us who have kind of lost connection to sort of church life and all that stuff that we sort of lean on growing up in a religious existence because of all of the fractures in those structures that have become so clear to so many of us and have harmed so many of us. It can be really hard to hold on to what matters. And I think that, if nothing else, matters. And so that all that was in my head and in my heart when Burnham talked about her second chances. And I feel like that's incumbent upon every one of us who feels we have been given a second chance in one way or another, rescued as we are by Christ, loved as we are when we are undeserving. I think it is incumbent upon us. It is a gift that we are given to be able to give that to others. And that's a beautiful moment that exemplified that for me. And I just, one of the highlights of the episode for me.
Yeah. Love that.
If it's any of interest or relevance in the liturgical traditions, Easter is a season that lasts well into May until Ascension Day. So
that's right.
So the church can remember sometimes that Easter is a really, really big deal, and just you need and every Sunday is a little Easter. Some traditions say
that's true.
For sure. It's not a gift that can be contained to just one day. Absolutely.
Right. Much like the 12 days of Christmas and the whole Advent season and all of that. Yeah, it's great how these ideas are often encompassed and stretched out. It's kind of like when when I have a birthday and like 3 weeks later someone's like, "Oh, I forgot, happy birthday." I'm like, "Hey, you just made my birthday longer." Thank you. It's like happy birthday extended edition. I'm happy for that. I love that. And by the way, happy First Contact Day, everybody. Speaking of,
yes, we made a joke the last time we recorded about First Contact Tide. So
yeah, that's right. It is First Contact Tide.
Yes. Yeah.
But I thought it was really interesting. The beginning of Red Directive takes place on the 1000th-ish anniversary of the Federation.
That's right.
That is pretty impressive as far as like societies go. For it to last for 1,000 years, that's really impressive.
And the fact that it just barely did, right? As they make a joke about, give or take a few decades, it was hard to keep track during the burn.
Right.
But, you make those kind of jokes when you've come through something that was really hard. You don't just toss that off as if it were no big deal. I was just hearing a thing on NPR today about humor as a coping mechanism for trauma.
Right.
And so that's where I think that comment about, hard to keep track during the burns coming out of. It's not just a clever nod to 2 seasons ago. It's whoever that character was. Ross. I don't remember Ross, but I don't know if she's a new character or what. But anyway, I was going to say it's and I think Kevin, you pointed this out to me several years ago when we were first talking about Star Trek. That I was complaining about where's the future of Star Trek promised, and you reminded me, as Strange New Worlds has in the interim, that that future didn't come without a period of, World War III and going to hell in a handbasket.
Right.
And it's like Michael Okuda saying all the time on Facebook, the graphic designer from TNG, Star Trek didn't promise us we have a future like this. It's saying we could have a future like this. We can have a future like this if we, much as, and not to get into Strange New Worlds, but much as Captain Pike says in the first episode of Strange New Worlds, here's your choice,
Right.
I set before you life and death,
Yeah.
So anyway, where was I headed? I don't know exactly. But I think that comment about the burn shows us it's not that the Federation inherently can persist for 1,000 years. It's people being willing to commit to the ideals and commit to doing the hard work of living out those ideals, like that station officer we saw 2 seasons ago on Discovery, who was keeping his post day in, day out.
Yes.
Even though to all rational outward appearance it seemed futile for him to be doing that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, he is able to help raise the Federation flag again at the end of that season. So that 1,000-year millennium of the Federation it's just a brief thing at the beginning of the episode, but I think there is a lot of significance there.
Mr. Sail.
Thank you.
Mr. Sahil. I love him. I wish we could see more of him, and he was fabulous. He's actually apparently like a really famous actor, like a really famous Indian actor. That's why they only got him for 2 episodes.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
But yeah, and you know, I wrote an article years ago about First Contact Day. And I don't remember it entirely, but I do remember the fact that as we celebrate First Contact Day as Star Trek fans, we're celebrating something that hasn't happened yet.
Right.
You know? And I think that's very much the sense of a lot of Christian ideas too, a lot of theological ideas.
Yeah.
We're celebrating a shalom that has not come, and we are working to cultivate that shalom as best we know how every day to work that out. And I think you're absolutely bang on to talk about the persistence is rooted in our diligence. And you know, I think that's something that Picard says to Worf in the Drumhead when Admiral Satie comes and there's this whole witch hunt on the Enterprise, right. and Worf kind of gets caught up into it, and you know, Picard says to Worf, eternal vigilance. That's the price we must pay. We have to always be vigilant. We have to always be paying attention. And that means paying attention to the condition of our hearts, paying attention to the condition of our minds, paying attention to how things are affecting us, and whether the places we're being led are in fact good and true and beautiful. And if they're not, what we're going to do about it. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah, the not yet and the already, because if it were not, that shalom and that good purpose had already been realized in the life of Jesus of Nazareth, then we would have no hope, right? So there would be no point in being vigilant, and we might be just people with good ideas trying to do some good. But there's some promise there that you know, our labor is not in vain, that the diligence is not in vain.
And let me say too, even if the future of Star Trek is one that is going to stay fictional, and by the same token, even if all of the language in the Bible about, and I'm saying this, all of the language of the Bible about shalom and about the restoration of all things, even if all that is figurative, and we don't have that to really truly look forward to, and because we can't know what's going to happen in the future, you know, even if that were the case, the hope of that, the vision of that, the goal of that gives us something to make our lives worthwhile now. So whatever we do as human beings, we have to have hope. We have to hold on to hope, because that diligence, that vigilance is necessary in order to create some semblance of shalom here and now, and in order to pass that on to future generations. That's the only thing that makes our living as human beings worth the living. So whatever your theological ideas are, whatever the level of believability is for you about whether someone can rise from the dead, whatever the level of believability is for you about whether heaven can come to earth, you know, and all things can be made right by God, all that sort of thing. Whatever you think about that, remember that the reason that those stories are even told is because those ideas and that hope is necessary for our existence as humans. And in whatever way we can, we have to lean into it. And that's, I think, what Star Trek does all the time.
At the end of the Red Directive, Saru tells Trina that he said, "In my youth, I struggled often with love, how to embrace those who were destined to be taken from me in the Cullings. Until I met you, I did not understand the degree to which that fear had constrained me." And what is the thing that got him out of that? What is the thing that broke him free for that? Mm-hmm. I mean, on one level, it was going through the Vaharai, or Vaharai, I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
That's right.
And surviving, right? On one level, that's what it was. But on the other level, it was, I think, it was seeing that there was still hope beyond the end of a relationship, a life, beyond himself, right? There was a hope beyond that.
Yes.
Once he was able to get that into his mind and make that a part of him, he was able to make it through the Vaharai. He was able to become a more a person who is more connected to a greater whole, right? And that hope that you were talking about, Kevin, that hope is what made him into the person who could trust and love and eventually break free and become the person who loves, in this case, Tarina. And I think that was a really cool thing that they were able to stick in there as well. This sort of change in Saru over time, from this really fearful person to this really hopeful person.
Absolutely, and let's not forget, for our purposes here particularly, that a major element of that transformation for Saru was letting go of a religion that was leading to death.
Yeah. Well, and dying to it in an almost literal way.
Or dying,
like he had to. Sorry, go ahead.
Dying to it, and what made you mean?
Well, he I believe it was last season. It might have been season 3, where, or was it even season 2? I don't know.
It was short
where
treks.
He was, no, where he was in his quarters with Michael.
Oh yeah, that was season 2.
Yeah, he was about to go through Vaharai, and he had that moment of being willing to die. He had to, he didn't actually die, but he had to be willing to lay down his life at that moment. Yeah. And in that, he became a new person.
Right.
And just coming full circle on him, it shows this real development of him as a person, because not only does he no longer fear his own death or fear connecting with somebody else and that they might die, but he's also no longer fearing Michael and who she might be. He originally had all that fear about her and who she would end up being, because she had been this mutineer and this possibly a traitor, but then he was able to come full circle on that and have this really meaningful, deep moment with Michael there at the end. I guess it was at the beginning of Under the Twin Moons, to just sort of talk about how he was, how proud he was of who she was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's really true, and it's a beautiful thing. His story is one of the best character arcs in this series, and I really, really love him as a character, and I really appreciate the work that Doug Jones has done bringing him to life, and it's just it's gonna be so sad to see him go, just like all of them.
Oh yeah.
Action Saru.
I'd
forgotten, when did he start shooting quills from his neck? That really confused me until I saw him do it, because I'd completely forgotten about that.
that was after his Vaharai. I don't remember exactly the episode, but yeah, we've seen him do it a couple of times before. Yeah. That's pretty great.
It is. What else was great? I really did love everything about Kumau. It's one of the most Star Warsy planets we've seen. Discovery keeps doing this, where they do these really, really cool planets. I mean, honestly, Kumau is one of them. What was it called? Lyric, I think. Yeah, Lyric was another, like the planet, the Necropolis planet. But the Kumau, like these set pieces that they're making with like Burnham and her really cool 32nd century spacesuit, where it's starting from the Singularity Mine or whatever, and going all the way through that last second beam in. That whole sequence there is a really, really cool set piece. And Kumau, this very Star Warsy place with motorcycles and an avalanche and spaceships intentionally crashing into the planet to block the avalanche. And then with Lyric and their it's this very Indiana Jonesy temple kind of complex with these traps and having to go through all of this solve all these puzzles sort of under the gun and everything. And then you've got characters like Fred, who's the Soong type android, who I thought was lore for a minute. But just all of these really cool moments of just inserting this really exciting and interesting concept, and not necessarily just sort of showing it to you and turning aside, but using it as part of the world building to make this world feel lived in, and to really give us more about what the 32nd century of the Federation is, because we didn't really get to see that very much in the season 3 and season 4, because we were dealing with all of these awful things, and so we'd get snatches of it here and there. But we're I think being allowed to sort of live in these moments for a little bit longer and see like Starfleet is still doing cool things like blocking avalanches to save townspeople. And there are still interesting, colorful characters like Fred that are just these really has this really fascinating like way of talking, and there's still really interesting and exciting technological stuff like Burnham's spacesuit, which I think that was the first moment where I felt like the 32nd century was more than just it's the same as Next Generation but with shinier hallways,
Right.
So I felt like this was a really these two episodes have had these really cool set pieces that have given me a lot of hope about what the rest of this season is going to look like with regard to that. There's a lot of really cool stuff in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love how being in the 32nd century lets us kind of go wild with technology, especially with the programmable matter and all that, which is basically like high-tech 3D printing, but but super high-tech. But okay, so a couple things that you mentioned I pinged on. One of them was stopping the avalanche. I just want to say for the record how utterly happy I am that my friend and yours, Adira, was the one who came up with that brilliant plan.
Yes.
Because they are, you know how much I love Adira. They are just one of my favorites. I love them so much, and they're a genius, an absolute genius. And I love when they're just like staring around and then just say something completely brilliant and save the day. And I just want want everybody to acknowledge for a minute that Adira saved the day and saved thousands of lives, and we love them.
In the grand tradition of Wesley Crusher. Yes. And I think that there's a lot of
much more endearingly,
right? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes. And I think there's a lot of real. There was a lot of thrill to me as well in that, like, they were batting around ideas with Stamets, right?
Yes.
Like the whole like back and forth of like it's very classic Star Trek, though. Like this time it was under the gun, and we got it again with Tilly. Was it Tilly and Adira in episode 2? I think as well. Where they were sort of batting around and Rennick, or not Rennick, but Rayner
was pushing them,
sort of FaceTimes in to sort of give them some nudges in the right direction, right?
Yeah.
But we get this sort of very classic like moment, almost, they don't actually do it, but it's that moment, that classic moment from Next Generation when Picard would look around at the bridge and say options, right? And you get this sort of batting around of like, here's an idea, here's the thing we could do, and they sort of come up with a good idea, and everybody nudges it around until it becomes a really cool thing, or a really workable thing, right? Something that'll actually be successful. And I thought that was really cool to actually get to do that again. So often I feel like the decisions are already made by the time we do it, because we've got to get right to the action, right? But we got to actually live in that decision-making process for a little while, which I've missed so much.
That's a great point. Yep. And how great is it to finally have Tilly back? I was so sad when she left. I guess it was early season 4, and I said, it's going to be a long slog for the rest of the season with no Tilly.
Yep.
But I'm glad she's back, and I was thinking back to her introduction in season 1 when she said so confidently to her cabin mate, Michael Burnham, I'm going to be a captain someday. Yeah. And I thought, okay, well, there's her character arc for the series. And yet she's not, and she's changed her vision of who she's going to be, and she's happy with what she's doing at Starfleet Academy, and I think that's a great choice for the series to make, to show us somebody who is able to reinvent themselves that way. We know a theme of this season is going to be, as Kevin's already alluded to with Stamets, how do we reinvent ourselves when we have to change, when we have to move on from our original plans, or we've achieved what we set out to achieve and we still have a life left to live. What do we do then? I found that whole opening sequence of episode 1 very moving, talking about change and how do we find our way in this new world. I think Burnham even says something more or less along those lines. So I think I just want to lift up Tilly as a great example of someone who's successfully doing that, and also facing, I guess I picked up the vibe, maybe there's a romance in the offing with that other person at Starfleet Academy,
right?
So her changes continue, but but also how she's grateful for what's come before and can slip back into Discovery crew member mode when asked to and when needed to. Mm-hmm. So just yay to Mary Wiseman for coming back silly for this final season.
Yeah, it would have been awful.
Wiseman's fantastic.
Yeah, it would have been awful to end the series without her. And then, as you're talking about that, Mike, I'm reminded of one of the ideas that I really pinged on when I was writing the book. That's so important in Star Trek is the idea of calling and destiny and right time, right? Mm-hmm. And how the 2009 film kind of blows that up and then says, okay, what do we do with it? What do we do when we break the timeline and we can't fix it? How do people still find their destiny? And so I really greatly appreciate in a series that does feel like, even though there is that sense of destiny, and I really love that sense of destiny in this series, a lot of times it feels a little bit locked in, like a person's going to be one thing for the rest of their lives. I mean, I think the end of Deep Space Nine pokes at that a good bit. But also just to have this during the run of a series, and not only just during the run of the series, because Tilly and presumably the person she's flirting with are going to be in our Starfleet Academy series. I mean, one assumes
that's true,
and so that's a whole thing that's going to blossom. For her to see someone finding their path when they're so sure of their path and then changing and adapting and growing. Because I one of the things that I talked about in that chapter on the 2009 film was that interplay between determinism, as you will, right? Or predestination and free will, or order and chaos. That the nature of the will of God, or the nature of the way we move through life toward God getting everything God wants. The greatness of God's plan is not that every microsecond is happening exactly the way God foresaw it, but that no matter what chaos happens, no matter what blows up, no matter who dies, no matter what career goes sideways, God gets what God wants. God gets everything God wants, one way or another, and that in that sort of microcosmic way, like with Paul, Hugh says to Paul, one of the great moments between the two of them in the first episode in Red Directive is when he says, "Look, you're going to find something else." I can't remember the line exactly, but he's telling him, look, you will find something else. You will still find a way to do valuable work. This one idea of your legacy, this one idea of your destiny, and the greatest thing you're ever going to do in your life is not the only thing. And I'm sitting there thinking, and this is your husband telling you this, and the greatest thing you're ever going to do is be a good husband and be a good father to Adira. That's really your greatest legacy right there. That is talking to you right now. So there are all kinds of ways that we have significance as human beings, and it can be really hard to find it, especially when we feel like that rug has been pulled out from under us. But there's always meaning there. Because we are human beings created in the image of God, because the good, the true, the beautiful does live inside of us, because we can hold on to hope, and because as human beings we are loved and worthy of love and able to give love to others, that in itself is a calling and a destiny that every human being has that is, by the way, enough.
I just want to say real quick, do they have a better place for boarding the ship than the shuttle bay? I recognize that their little site-to-site transporter things on their comm badges mean that they don't need a transporter room anymore. But the fact that Michael has to meet Book in the cargo bay or the shuttle bay, why did they just?
Well, weren't they bringing his ship aboard?
No, his ship blew up.
Oh, that's right.
We're just bringing him.
Well.
Yeah, so I
don't know.
I couldn't figure out why she had to go all the way down to the shuttle bay to meet him and then take him back. Anyway, sorry, that was just sticking in my brain. We don't even have to talk about that. I just thought that was weird.
I don't know. It's like anything. Tim said for years, like, why don't they do side-to-side transport all the time within the ship? Why do people run from one end of the ship to the other? Just do side-to-side transport. He said that for years. And I'm like, well, there are risks to side-to-side transport and all that. Now that we're in the 32nd century, where side-to-side transport is totally a thing, totally normal, people just like, oh, I need to go downstairs. Boop. I'm going to bamf there, then it's very clear at this point what has always been true. The reason we walk places is for dramatic purposes.
That's well, they got to get their steps in the 32nd century. I mean, you can't just bamf all the time.
That's true too.
It atrophy.
One of the functions of their comm badge / tricorder / phaser replicator
Tricom badge.
Is that what
it's called a Tricom badge, yes.
Okay. One of the functions of that must also be like closing your rings, right? On your Apple Watch.
That's right.
Yeah, so you mentioned Fred, and I mentioned Fred, and Fred is cool. And I don't know, just for a brief moment, I looked at him and I thought, are they trying to recast somebody to play Lore?
Wow.
Just because he had that sort of look in his eyes almost. Of Data has this very... Brent Spiner played him with this very doe-eyed, like, innocent look in his eyes. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily... Not at all stupid,
right.
But like just...
innocent.
Yeah, innocent.
Open.
But he played Lore with this slightly different look in his face, like his slightly different eyes. Mm-hmm. And I didn't check to see who the actor was that played Fred, but the actor made the choice to, I don't know, almost like halfway between Data and Lore. He did not have that like completely innocent, completely open, completely doe-eyed look about him, but he also did not quite have that like, I know something you don't know, and it's going to be really good for me and really bad for you.
Right.
Look that he used Spiner used for Lore. So I just thought that was really interesting. A really interesting character. I really
interesting as well. I mean, I'm surprised to hear you both say you thought he was cool. I found him very creepy.
Well,
I can't quite put my finger on it, but I didn't trust him.
Right. No, agreed.
I didn't trust him immediately.
Yeah. No, I also did not trust him. I just thought he was cool.
We think he's cool. We don't think he's like a good guy or something. We don't want to have coffee with him. We just think he's interesting to watch.
Though we did find out in was it season 1 of Picard, right, that like all synths have a twin now. And so
I forgot.
Does Fred have a twin? And in season 1 of Picard, the two twins that Picard was dealing with like were slightly different, right, in their personality and everything. So maybe Fred's twin is less unreliable and less scary.
Maybe. That's interesting. Maybe he'll show up because
it'd be interesting. That would be interesting. Yeah,
it will.
Come and claim his brother's body from Discovery.
Right. Yeah, I was like 6 steps ahead of the story actually. When he was flipping through the diary, I was like, okay, well now all that information is stored in his brain.
Right.
And and then I'm like, okay, and he's about to be killed, and then once he's killed, I'm like, okay, they're gonna have to save his brain and find all that stuff. I mean, it was just very that it had to go that way.
I want to know how he came by the name Fred. Did he choose it for himself?
I would like to know that. Too. There's so many questions to ask about Fred.
It's so pedestrian, it's strange.
So many questions to ask about Fred. And is he named for Fred Fryerberger? I don't know.
I did actually look it up. The actor playing Fred was J. Adam Brown, so that is worth noting. And also, just looking it up, it reminded me he's 600 years old,
right,
which puts him at he is younger than Picard. Golem Picard is, right? So I think that is a thing to note as well, right? Like he came about 200 years after Alton Soong lived, right? So that is a thing to note as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, he is from the time in between, right, where we don't currently have any sort of
information
about.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah, I'll be really interested to see if we learn more about what has gone on with Soong-type androids. That's really fascinating that one showed up, that he looked so cool. That was exciting. That was really cool. All right, so what else do we think we need to cover about this episode? These 2 episodes. My goodness.
I think more so than any of the season premieres of previous episodes or previous seasons of Discovery, I am hopeful for where this season is going. Not that I was necessarily down on those seasons at the beginning,
right?
But I was sort of cautiously optimistic about them, whereas in this case I feel actually hopeful about where this is going, and I think it's down to the performances and the writing in these 2 episodes. I like I mentioned before, I'm glad that we're not being strung along on this mystery that's going to last throughout the whole thing. We already know what we're doing, and we know what the character arcs are going to be, and I'm looking forward to seeing those play out. It's the journey and not the destination for this one, and I'm really excited.
Or at least we think we know. I mean, it would be maybe they're lulling us into a false sense of security.
And maybe, we talked about the already not yet, that inaugurated eschatology.
We did.
Maybe this is the same sort of thing, where it's the already of knowing what's happening and the not yet of not reaching it there. But also, I'm happy for the rug to be pulled out from under me later on in the season, as long as they don't try to cram another season's worth of story into the last episode, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I guess we're not going to see Grudge this season.
Yeah, we did. We saw her in.
They mentioned Grudge. Did we see Grudge?
She's on Discovery.
Okay.
Yeah, she's on Discovery now.
Yep.
My bad.
That's all right.
Burnham has that holographic mouse that she.
That's right.
That was great.
Grudge was not in any way interested.
No.
Because she wouldn't be. I mean, come on.
She's a queen.
Yeah, she is. Right. That's awesome.
What do you guys think about these episodes?
Well, I liked them. I mean, I enjoyed them. I watched the first one twice. I'd like to go back and watch the second one before this week's episode drops. But yeah, I'm as I said, I enjoyed them, and overall very, very pleased. We'll see how the format of. I'm not so on board with another season of picking up puzzle pieces, but we'll see. And I'm certainly most interested to see what additional layers they are either putting on or mining from the chase, because that really, I was surprised and impressed they would go back that far to find the basis for this season's overarching story. Because as I said at the time, it seemed like it was the episode meant to explain the thing, and it explained it.
Yeah,
that's that. So yeah. But I guess I'm anticipating something very significant being said about origins and power by the time the season is over. So hopefully, as well as, of course, I wonder how some of the things that struck me so much about this first episode, especially the issues about change and moving on, and I wonder if they added any of that. I know they learned while they were filming the season that it would be their last, and Jonathan Frakes has said in the press that gave them, that was a good thing, because it gave them the chance to give the season a sense of finality to the series as a whole. And so I wonder if any of that was reflected in what we saw last week. Because we may never know, but it would be interesting to know.
Yeah, it would be. I'm given to understand that they were that they had to go back and do reshoots.
Okay, well then it's possible.
So yeah. I thoroughly enjoyed these 2 episodes. I think again, for me, it's all about the characters. So much about the characters. I'm a big Burnham and Book fan. I'm just waiting. They're having that conversation about how things are difficult to move past and all that. I'm like, yeah, but come on, you two. I mean, come on. just do the thing. Just you smile at her, you smile at him. Yeah, just step a little closer, give it a kissy and get it done. Come on, you belong together. You know it. Stop, dragging stop stringing my romantic heart around. And then and of course, Saru and Tarina. I love that dynamic. I love that they're going to be married. That's that's crazy.
How beautiful is it to hear a Vulcan character just calmly and openly talk about loving someone like that?
Kidding. That's
Sarek would never have done that,
right?
But Tarina, and over in Strange New Worlds, they've given us Spock and T'Pol's relationship. It's just nice for Star Trek to be acknowledging, of course, Vulcans love and feel everything else, but they just go about it differently. But I thought that was a really beautiful performance. The woman who played Tarina,
it really is. It's T'Pring, by the way, in
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My weird revisionist.
That would be weird. Spock and T'Pol. That'd be weird.
No. T'Pring. Thank you.
But
yes.
No, and then and just seeing. I'm hoping Adira goes over to the Starfleet Academy series just because I can't get enough of them.
Yeah, that'd be good.
That'd be good. And I hope we get to see Jet Reno at some point because Jet Reno is another one of my favorites. So, yeah, but I'm excited to see these people. Oh, and I'm just so excited about Raynor as the new number one. Like I'm just that dynamic's going to be so great.
I heard some people online wondering if Raynor was going to be a similar level of problem for Burnham as Burnham was for Georgiou. Like, not even just contrarian, but just like actively a mutineer. Like, is he going to try to take over Discovery? Wow. And I have to say, I was very surprised by that. I do not catch any of that on him at all.
I don't get that vibe from him, but
no, me either. So all that to say, if they do end up doing that, I would be probably as blindsided as Burnham would be.
Yeah.
But no, I did not get any of that. But I wanted to bring that up in case either of you felt any of that.
It hadn't occurred to me, but if they did it, I think they would do it in such a way that we would totally understand where Raynor was coming from in the moment. Just like in that hearing he had with Starfleet Command or the President of the Federation, wherever that tribunal was, he was not talking nonsense.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, and I really liked the interplay where Burnham doesn't want to talk bad about a fellow officer, and Admiral Vance has to say, "Look, I get it." But I thought everybody's played that beautifully. It felt very plausible dramatically to me, and I think I don't anticipate that would happen, but maybe that'll be one of the surprises. But if they do I think
everybody seemed very likable in that scenario.
Yeah.
I mean,
even though they disagreed, I felt like I could see everyone's point of view, which I feel like when Star Trek is at its best, I can do that. Like even the villain, I can see why they got there, how they got there. And there wasn't a villain in this case,
right? And with Raynor in that scene, which is a great scene, really well scripted, really well acted. And he's talking about this species, and this species, the Orions and all this stuff. And saying, war is inevitable kind of thing. In my head, I'm hearing echoes of Admiral Marcus from Star Trek Into Darkness, War is coming, and I'm like, uh-oh. And then I'm also thinking of him as like so entrenched in like, a battle mindset, a warfare mindset. And I'm hearing echoes of Lorca as well. And it's kind of interesting to see, because in the first season, Burnham was kind of like, well, as we all were, kind of like on the fence about Lorca and drawn to him and charmed by him and inspired by him on one hand, and then repulsed by him on the other. And so to have this version of Michael who's gone through this arc, right, and has grown so much as a human being, to now be intentionally pairing herself with someone who has that aggression in him, and yet, also that really good heart and those really good principles at his core that ultimately will win out, that his conscience does ultimately win out, and he can pull himself back from the edge, even though he has that desire to, shoot the mountain and blow things up. I'm really interested to see how that dynamic might show us even more of Michael's growth and how her experiences might inform their relationship. It's just a really, there's always been in in Discovery, this constant switch of who's the captain, who's the first officer. It just keeps rotating and keeps rotating and keeps rotating. And to have it do that again in season 5 was something that kind of surprised me, honestly. And yet this new dynamic is going to be really interesting. And so I'm looking forward to it.
I agree. And I also, one thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the full circle of Michael, but I think it fits really well here, is that, we had that moment at the beginning of season 1, episode 1, where she's got this really stable relationship with her mentor and this authority figure that she really appreciates and values. And then, obviously things happen, right?
Yeah.
And now here at the end, we have her dealing with Admiral Vance in the same sort of way. They have that same sort of really easy, really they really dependent upon one another sort of relationship where they trusting, yes, exactly, where they feel like they know each other really well, and they each know what the other needs and what the other wants. And I thought that was really, really interesting to sort of see that develop up to this point, because she hasn't had that, not really, up until now. And it also, like, when we first saw Admiral Vance, when we first got to the 32nd century, like that was a thing that we were kind of worried about, right? We were concerned that maybe this might be another Badmiral thing, right? That this is another evil admiral. But no, it turns out he's not a Badmiral, he's a Dadmiral, right? he's got this very fatherly
he's a good one.
So.
I like him.
Yeah, I agree.
That's great.
Real quick, I want to hear what we gave some guesses or bets almost. What do you think about this list of people here? Who on it is going to live by the end of season 5, and who on it is going to die by the end of season 5?
Nope, they're all going to live.
Okay. So my list is Saru,
lives,
Rayner, and Stannis.
Well, Rayner, I guess I could see the. I don't know. I guess I could see something, especially now that Kevin's brought in Admiral Marcus and Lorca into the. I was all in with Rayner.
I don't think he is a Marcus or a Lorca. It's just that the things.
Yeah, but now you've raised the specter that he could be.
The things that he was saying echo that he has that bit of as part of that mentality in him. But I don't think that's the core of who he is. I think that's who he's had to become. But I think that also, it's kind of like the relationship between like faith and cynicism. It's like one sharpens the other. So I hope that makes it. But out of all of them, I think he is the character most likely to die because he's the newest.
Right.
But I'm going to go Doctor Who here and say everybody lives. Just this once. Everybody lives.
That would be nice.
At the end of Discovery Season 5, they're all going to be alive.
I would like that very much.
I would too.
I would support that 100%. All right. Cool. Well, now we've played the Who's Gonna Die This Season game. Should we finish up our game of trivia?
All right.
Yes. All
right.
So submit your answers into the chat.
Okay. In 3, 2, 1. Submitting.
Well, at a glance, it looks like we all did pretty well, but let's go through them one by one.
Okay.
Which alien race did the Vulcans have a 100-year war with? That would indeed be the Romulans.
We all said Romulans, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Why do Kirk and Uhura kiss in Plato's Stepchildren? The answer on the card is Parman forces them to kiss using telekinesis.
Right.
Let's see,
and
Kevin, they are being forced by the aliens' powers. I think that's yes. David, they're forced to by godlike beings for sport. Yes, I said because the Plutonians telepathically force them to kiss. I think we all get credit for that.
Yeah.
Majel Barrett. Now, who was Majel Barrett?
Yeah, the name rings a bell. She did the voice. She did the.
I think I saw her in. She was in an episode of Babylon 5 once. Majel Barrett plays Counselor Troy's mother, Lwaxana. What was her relationship to the creator of Star Trek? And we all indeed knew she was Gene Roddenberry's wife.
Yes, absolutely.
So we all get to share the Golden Self-Sealing Stembolt this week.
That's wonderful. Oh, did you see that? Did you notice the self-sealing Stembolt?
And we saw an actual Stembolt.
That's right.
I think that was in Twin Moons. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it was in Red Directive because it was
Red
what they were.
Directive.
Yeah, they dumped it out on Fred's
table.
To
Fred, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is a brand new term, right? Red Directive. We've never.
I think so.
They use this
like
term
Black Alert. That's new to Discovery.
Yeah, they use this term like 4 times throughout the episode, and I'm still like, wait, what is this?
I mean, I guess it doesn't really need to be defined. They know what it is, and clearly it's like this is top priority, ultra important.
Right.
So, but and confidential. Hush hush.
I mean, it reminded me a lot of. I mean, obviously, it's supposed to remind you of Prime Directive. It also reminded me a lot of Omega Directive from Voyager.
Oh, from Voyager.
Yeah. So.
What did we think of the Infinity Room?
Uh-huh. Yep.
The Infinity Room. I thought it was pretty cool.
You mean the construct?
The what?
I said, you mean the construct?
The construct
from the Matrix.
Right.
Yes.
The Matrix.
Yeah.
The construct.
I almost got there before you said that. Yes. I worry a little bit that I feel like we've got a lot of throughout the course of the 3rd and 4th season, we had a lot of throwaway tech, 32nd century stuff that appears for 1 episode or maybe 2 and then just goes away. And stuff that feels like it could be useful in other circumstances. Is this does it actually beam people to this place, or is it just like holographic teleconferencing? And if it does beam people to this place, can it beam you from anywhere? And if it can do that, then why are they bothering with pathway drives or spore drives? And I don't know. It was an interesting idea. I hope they do more with it. I'm a little bit worried that this was just throwaway tech.
It is possible. It is. To my mind, it is the 32nd century cone of silence.
Yeah.
So it probably, I think they're standing in a room and it envelops them or something in a weird little warp bubble or something. I don't know. Or maybe they bamf there. I don't know. I want to know what the little infinity thing is that Kovic gives Michael. I wonder what that is. I mean, that's even made the main titles, so we'll have to figure out what that is later in the
season. It was Anton Chekhov, I think, who said if you use an infinity room in Act 1, you have to use it again by Act 3. So
it's Chekhov's infinity room.
That's right.
Oh my gosh, that's great. All right, well, folks, this has been a fabulous conversation, an extended episode, which you deserve after waiting for 2 years to hear from us. And since we're covering 2 episodes as well, Mike, David, thank you both for being here, as always. And thank you for listening, because you're awesome. So, Mike, what's going on next week?
So next week, we'll be talking about Episode 3 of Season 5 of Discovery, Janal.
That sounds fabulous. And in the meantime, please like, comment, and share. And if you like what you're hearing, please write a review on iTunes or wherever you're listening. Your reviews help more people find out about the show and let us know how we're doing.
Also, send us your feedback and questions. You can find us at Gospel Trek Pod on both Twitter and Instagram, and The Gospel According to Star Trek on Facebook. Or you can email us at gospeltrekpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to discuss your question on the show.
Also, you can support the show by subscribing. Just click the subscribe button wherever you listen.
And that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Gospel According to Star Trek podcast. Thank you so much for being here. And until next time,
I'm Mike Poteet.
I'm David Atwell.
And I'm Kevin C. Neese. And as Jesus said in John 10:10, live long and prosper. See you next time.